Hey everyone, welcome back to the Board Game Spotlight. Today we're going to look at Atlantis Rising from Elf Creek Games. It's a game for 1 to 6 players, plays in about 60 to 120 minutes, and it's illustrated by Vincent Dutré. So let's take this to the table and I'm going to tell you about it. So today we've set up a 3-player game of Atlantis Rising, and each player is going to take on the role of a counselor. And this is the counselor meeple, and you have your followers. Now each player is going to have an asymmetric variable player power. So this is the guardian, we have the priestess, and the champion. So no two counselors are the same. Players are going to be able to use these variable player powers to solve the puzzle of how to survive. Now, Atlantis Rising is a cooperative worker placement game. You're going to work together with your fellow counselors to deploy your citizens or your Atlanteans around the peninsulas, and you're going to gain resources. You're going to have to survive, and essentially you're trying to build this cosmic gate. This is what is going to get the Atlanteans off the island before it sinks, and it's going to allow you to win the game. So let's go ahead and take a look at the island. As you can see, there are 6 peninsulas around the island. We'll start in the middle. This is the Mystic Gate. This is where you can gain Mystic Energy. Mystic Energy is really important because it can be used to add pips to your dice rolls. As you roll dice at some of the various resource locations, you can use your Mystic Energy to give you a +1 and allow you to successfully gain those resources. So let's talk about the mountains. The mountains are where you can gain ore. Ore is then used to transmute it into Atlantium. Atlantium is a very precious resource that is used in almost all of the pieces to the Cosmic Gate. So these 2 peninsulas are extremely important, though I can't say that any one peninsula is more important than the others because they all do something different. Over here we have the libraries. Now this is the library. It's going to allow you to draw cards. These cards can be used on their turn and they are very powerful. This is a deck of cards that players do not want to overlook. When you have cards, you're going to have the option of playing them on your turn, and they're going to have a myriad of different abilities and different uses. So in this case, we can draw and play a misfortune, but we can unflood a tile. We'll talk about what flooding and unflooding does because that is a very crucial aspect of this game. Over here in the cities, this part of the peninsula is going to allow us to gain more followers. We have volunteers, which are gray, and then you have your color-specific citizens that you can recruit. Over here in the forest, it's going to allow us to gain crystals. Again, crystals are another resource that are used in the creation of pieces to the Cosmic Gate. And then we have the hills, which is where we're going to gain gold. Again, gold is a precious commodity. Now, the flow of the game is that at the beginning of the round, players are going to cooperatively and simultaneously place their citizens around the board. Now, you'll notice there are action locations at each part of the peninsula. The lower you are to the shore or the tip of the peninsula, the better the outcome. So it is easier to gain ore at the bottom of the peninsula than it is at the top. And that is true of all of the pieces of the island. So as players work together to simultaneously place their citizens out into the peninsulas, they're going to be able to place them in these locations. And you'll notice that there are only enough locations for 3 in some of these, and it goes down to just 1 here at the bottom. Now, the press your luck aspect of the game is that the lower you place your meeple, you run the risk of having your meeple action lost to a misfortune. Because after we place our Atlanteans, then we're going to have to suffer the misfortunes. You'll notice that the counselors can share spaces with other meeples. So you'll notice that some of these locations are like together. In this case, it means that you have to have 2 citizens in order to take this specific action, whereas in these locations, it only takes 1 citizen to activate that specific location. So after we've placed all of our Atlanteans, and it's important to note that it is very strategic on how the team places all of their Atlanteans around the board, because using your counselor, this is the meeple that is going to activate your specific variable player power. So in the case of the priestess is going to allow an Atlantean on a tile with their leader, with their counselor, it's going to allow you to re-roll a failed roll. The champion, when a tile is with your leader and it's flooded, the Atlanteans on that tile can immediately take that action. And then the guardian, when a tile in the same section when your leader is about to be flooded, you can prevent this by returning the leader to your player board. So there is a lot of risk mitigation with using your leaders, though that is why there's only one of them in the game. So after we've placed all of our Atlanteans, we're going to go into the misfortune cards. Each player is going to draw one misfortune, and then you're going to have to flood the location on that card. In this case, we flood the first cities tile. Unfortunately, that means that both of these citizens are lost for their action, and we flip this tile over and it is no longer able to be used. Then we go to the next one, we have mountains. So over in the mountains, we would flip over that tile. The next one is calm seas. Oh, this is refreshing. This is so nice to see. Nothing happens. We're able to continue on with our journey of collecting resources and trying to survive the sinking island of Atlantis. And then we have controlled flood. Okay, this is not good, but what this means is that the players collectively can determine which two tiles that they want to flood. Now, it's ultimately up to the player that draws the card on what gets flooded, but players can collectively, talk and determine on what they think is best. So in this case, I think it's best that we flood this part of the island. And then I think we don't want to flood anything here to lose these actions. We don't want to flood this because that means it's going to progress even further. We don't want to lose this. I think we have to go here and flood that portion. Now we're able to go into taking our actions. We have suffered the misfortunes. Now we get to go into our action steps. So this is also done simultaneously. Players can work together to take all of their actions. So we could come over here and we would roll. This needs a 3 to gain an ore. So we would take our die, we'd roll it, we got a 5. So we would take one piece of ore, and then this player would roll. They have a 2, but guess what? They have mystic energy, which can be gained here at the mystic gate. They'll use that mystic energy to turn this into a 3, which is indeed passing, and they will take their ore piece. So these are returned to the players after they are used. Then over here, we could use the ore that we purchased and turn it into 3 Atlantium. That is super powerful because on these mystic gate core cards, we're going to need to use Atlantium, which is this resource here, in order to build these pieces to the gate. Now, the end game goal is to build all of these pieces to the gate. In order to win, you have to build all of these pieces and then build the core, power core, in order to survive and get off the sinking island. So over here, then with this orange player, they did not have any ore, but the blue player does. So they would gain 2 Atlantium and they would return their ore to the supply. And over here, we're gonna try to go for gold. They're going to make 1 roll for 1 gold and they missed it, but we could turn in our mystic energy to turn the 3 into a 4, which gives us 1 gold piece. And then they'd make another roll for their second meeple, and it's a 1, and they have failed. After we go through taking all of our actions, we're then going to go into the Wrath of the Gods step. Now this is the Wrath of the Gods board. At the end of the round, this is going to continue to move upwards. At the end of each round, we have to flood this many tiles. So in the first round, we don't flood any, but we do move the Wrath of the God marker up, which means in the second round, we would have to flood 1 tile of our choice. Now, the trade-off to the Wrath of the Gods is that when you recruit new followers, you're going to add whatever level the God track is on, plus your die roll. Now, these are essentially workers. So gaining volunteers or your color workers, they all function the same. Now, you'll notice that these tiles are going to become flooded. Now, this is going to continue to move up the island. The game is over if all of the peninsulas on the island are flooded. So if every single one of these tiles is flipped and there are no spaces left at all on the island, all players lose. Players will win the game if they are able to collectively build all of the parts to the cosmic gate. The game plays out in a variable number of rounds because it just depends on which happens first. Are players going to win, or are the players going to lose? If you like what you see and you want to know more about Atlantis Rising, take a look at the description below for a link to their Kickstarter campaign. This has been Derek with the Board Game Spotlight, and this has been your preview of Atlantis Rising.